welcome to the Facebook Live for the Lost Distillery Company. We're here tonight to explore the unboxing of our Discovery Selection gift box, and we're going to take you on a journey tonight. Here you can see the box that we have here as a gift pack, and please gather round and hunker down as we are lost. We are all lost at home. So please find yourself the selection box if you manage to get one in time, and we can take this journey. And as we go across the selection range, we'll taste, but I'd like your feedback, what you think, see what you're tasting and enjoying, which one your favourite, what's important. And please follow our link and our Facebook page. Now, we have a very special offer on just now as we're live. We have created a free delivery special, and this is for on the web shop, the e-shop that we have to buy some of the products. So this one is free, as in free, DEL UK. So if you use this at the cart, you get free delivery on these, and you get a special 10% off at the moment in the web shop. So there's all sorts of things to buy, as well as the Discovery box, as well as the large size bottles you can see behind me, and we have the Archivist and the Vintage series. This box here, you'll see there's 6 in the box. We actually have 7 on the Expression range here, and so we're going to take you along all of them. Some of the boxes might have different selections in them, and there's also the 3-pack there. So just to cover all the bases. So if everyone can hear me okay, everyone is following along, and hopefully we've enough bandwidth for this. I'm keeping an eye on the Facebook that we have here just to make sure, and follow on the comments. So please put your questions in, and I'll try and answer the questions as we go along. So here we have the Discovery box, unboxing the Discovery Selection journey through Scotland's whisky heritage. And this is going to be part of the story that we taste tonight. The Lost Legends Reborn. These legends that have gone, and we have recreated these, the spirit of these and their legacy. So on the back, I should take you a tour around the box. You see here that this is handcrafted on Long Close Distilleries, and the story was that we lost half of all the distilleries a century ago in the 1920s for different reasons, like prohibition, overproduction. There was the world wars that were on, so economic decline in the world, Great Depression. So we lost many distilleries, and this is a recreation of how we might feel that they would be. So this is going to take an academic turn, where we go into the research of each distillery, and find what happened at the distillery, the styles. And we do this with a process of 10 key elements, the DNA of the distillery. And each of these, for instance, like peat, the yeast, the barley, the oak, various different elements, era, you know, and this has a relevance to what style, you know, the casks and what was being made in the area, local farm distillers, and we can ascertain a little bit about how the distilleries were. We've got a lot of details in this. The historical records in Scotland are quite extensive, especially since the 1823 Act. So lots of information about the production. So we ascertained this, and we have a whisky making team headed by our master blender, and they are creating and curating casks of whisky where they blend the single malts together. So some of the story, there's a map on the regions where each one was located in which region, and then we have the stylometer across the bottom. So we start on the left with a lighter style whisky, like Ochnaggy we're going to start with, and right across to the heavy peated style. So this style is quite a good guide to take you across as we go through the tasting, as you explore the pack. So the packs are ready. We're all ready to go for this and go inside. Take a deep dive inside the pack. What we're going to do is we're going to start on the left here. We'll go left to right. So if you can pull the first one out, the bottle, the black bottles, homage to the old style, these bottles. And the first one you'll see here, they're all different colour coded. This one is Ochnagi. You can see Achnagi is in Highlands in Perthshire. So right in the heart of the Highlands. You can see here there's an infographic on the label, and the map is there, shows you where in Scotland. Down here on the left, sorry, and then in the middle, the era is 1812 to 1911, so nearly 100 years this was open. And some of the tasting notes like honey and pepper. But you see here, Ochnagi has a description as blended malt Scotch whisky. And this tells you straight away that there's only going to be single malts in the bottle, no grain whisky inside here. Blended malt Scotch whisky is a marriage of different single malts. So these are recreated to create this homage to Ochnagi. And you can see is 5cl 50ml and is 43% and it's non-chill filter. So I'm going to go ahead, and I hope you will too. We'll go ahead and open these. I should have prepared this. And I prepared these ones ready for it, but the first one I didn't. And so these are nicely open, and pour straight into the glass. So pour your whiskey into the glass, fill it up, and I'll put this up the front here so you can see it. And here we go. So the whiskey in the glass. Of course, first of all, we're going to say Slán wherever you are in the world tonight. We're hunkering down, staying at home and enjoying a good dram. So we're having the first one, Ochnagi. You can see it's a lighter colour. It's going to be like an oak Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc colour in the glass of the Scotch whisky. And this is 43% non-chill filter. So there's going to be some beautiful balance in this one. It's a lighter colour. It's going to be bourbon barrel casks. And on the nose, you're going to find there's not going to be some heavy peat and heavy sherry here. This is going to have some elegance. I like to think this of like breakfast whiskey. Breakfast whiskey, not because we have it at breakfast, although some people might be having breakfast a little later on these days. No, this is more the flavours of breakfast. So like cereal notes like porridge and some honey and some citrus notes. Citrus we have at breakfast time as well. So this is going to be like an aperitif dram. So this one was open for nearly 100 years, farm style distillery, and they made a natural style. It was passed through a number of different owners. There was many farm style distilleries high above the Strathty Valley in the middle of Scotland, in the heart of Scotland. Slán. Beautiful rich honey notes, and you feel some floral notes through the second part, and then onto boiled sweets. You can feel the hard candy, you might call it in the US. So there's a sweetness in the nose, beautiful, elegant. I think of this as like an aperitif dram. You know, in France, many people like Ochnagi before dinner. So this is an aperitif to get the evening started. You start on the Ochnagi. A beautiful dram. So this one, Ochnagi, was for nearly 100 years. Now, the railways came through in the 19th century, Victorian era. The Victorians came and tourists up to Pitlochry, but they didn't build the railway up to Tullymet where Ochnagi was. So, unfortunately, it was left behind. There was a famous owner. The first distillery bought by John Dewar and son, Tommy Dewar. His first distillery was Ochnagi, the one he bought. So they would move down the valley to Aberfeldy, open a distillery there, and the rest is history. So this was left behind in history. but in the formative years, very important part of Scotch whisky heritage. When we think of the blending boom of blended Scotch whisky, and it becomes famous the back end of the 19th century, is down to the fact that people preferred Highland malt, but they would use the lowland grain whisky and they would blend that, and that was the perfect recipe that would send across the world as blended Scotch, and fuels the industry to this day. So this is part of that heritage and story behind it. So next out the box, we take this one here. Is going to be Strath Eden. Strath Eden, Strath Open Valley, as you drive towards St Andrews from Edinburgh, and is the Lomond Hills in between. Eden is the name of the River Eden that opens out at St Andrews, the home of golf. Now this one here, well, I've already poured mine, so please pour your next dram, and if you're sharing, this one is Strath Eden is going to be lowland malts inside, and this one opens in 1829 and closes in 1926, as we see in the label here, and is a Bonthron family, 3 generations, one family, full of traditions, and they were a forefather to single malt style Scotch whisky in the lowlands. But they were very unique because what they did was they had a trade. They were pioneers of the malt trade, so they traded barley up to Orkney. They wouldn't bring the ship empty, so they brought down the peat, preferred the peat from the north of Scotland, and this was used in this. So this is going to have a more salty edge to the drams. This is going to have a feeling of, you had the bourbon casks at the beginning in Lochnagie, and then we're moving to some bourbon, but also second fill sherry casks. So the sherry casks that are involved here are going to bring the notes of orange peel and some dark chocolate notes. So there's a beautiful nose to this, and there's a promise of something further going on in here. This is much more than a regular lowland malt whisky you're going to have here. This one, you're going to feel that it's going to be more like a coastal dram. So on the nose, you have that citrus and you have the chocolate notes. When you feel in the palate, through the palate, 43%, but there's a bite to it. You can feel the briny notes, maybe like umami. If you like some aged cheese, some Comté cheese or old Amsterdam cheese, some sushi, things that have umami is especially nice. So we have here Strath Eden, and this era was also nearly 100 years. And we have the elements of that this one is going to be a traditional family that stays in the one family. Auchnagie had many different people, a farm distillery. This is a town distillery in the centre of Auchtermuchty in Fife. Market town, the hill of the wild boar. Now Auchtermuchty, the 1920s, you've got the decline of you've got the US prohibition that comes in, big customer, and also they were still water powered when electricity came in, so they were kind of left behind in history, Strath Eden. So traditional, very traditional whisky making techniques in Scotland that really famous for Scotch whisky, passing down the techniques through the generations. So this was what the Bonthrones were about, and we wanted to bring this style back so that represents something different from lowland whiskies that maybe you see today. So this has this very maritime note to it. Beautiful dram, Slàinte. We're checking the Facebook for comments and questions, try and answer as many questions. We'll have a Q&A at the end and see if we can sift through any of the comments, and if there's some questions I can answer. Beautiful dram, Strath Eden. Something a little different and very food friendly as well for this one. So you can see we're going through the chocolate box of Scotch whisky. You can see the colours in the glass, different cask influence, starting with a bourbon cask, bourbon and second fill sherry. What you do with the different casks, different time, has an impact on the style, the profile of the whiskies. The third whisky that we'll move on to is going to be from Towie in the Speyside region. Now, for many people, there's a favourite style. We can see on the bottle, you can read the bottle here, is up in the north of Scotland, the highest collection of distilleries, and this one is going to be predominantly second fill sherry casks. So we start to see a change, a deeper amber colour in the glass, this rich amber colour from Oloroso, dry sherry from the south of Spain, and it was up in the Highlands where the sherry casks were going to be pioneered. This is in the Speyside, 1898. It's a bit later on than some of the known distilleries that came, but this is Peter Dawson. He's a forgotten man of Speyside, opened to 1931, and he became one of the whiskey barons, you might call it. He was a famous guy in his day. Whiskey exported around the globe, down to Antarctic with the Terra Nova expedition 1911, and Towie is a really complex dram. It's an old taste of the Speyside. So when we think of Speyside, we've got green apples and these really nice fruity round notes. Here you're going to feel some elements of some bourbon, but also the second fill sherry cask. And now these Oloroso casks are going to deliver the dried fruits and some green apple pastry. But there's also going to be a whiff of tobacco in there. You're going to feel a puff of smoke, because in Scotch whisky in this area, they were using peat before, and of course it moves through from peat to coke and coal eventually, and these are not going to feel so much in the whisky, so as more fruity style whisky in Speysides generally in the past, today. And so in the past, even the old Macallans from the 40s and 50s, you'd have felt some touch of smoke in these whiskies. So we see Slàinte mhath, and on to the third whisky. We'll get 3 and we'll get 6 in the box in total. So please tell us which ones you're enjoying at the moment, and any favourites, and what you think of the range. If you've got questions you still want answered about how we do it and more about the whiskies or the distilleries, please ask in the comments, and I'll be delighted to answer. Beautiful notes, and it has a classic apple pie vanilla ice cream. Second part of the palate, smooth and creamy. For people who like Speyside whisky, this does not miss. It's a very good dram and a quality. So with these whiskies here, you'll find that the profile is no age statement. However, it's going to be in a range of roughly about 10 to 12 years old single malts that are married together. We don't like to stick to the age statement for these, because we are the only people in Scotch whisky who are like whisky archaeologists, you might call it. We recreate these profiles from the past. So we do need the flexibility to be able to recreate what they might produce. It's quite important to have that so that we can fulfill these beautiful drams. So the chocolate box of Scotch whisky, you're going across a different range. Towie closed because the limestone quarry that was beside it just so happened there was a contamination into the water, so they had to close the distillery. Very sad. He was a big producer, 2.9 million gallons of Scotch onto the market at the time. So Peter Dawson was a well-known guy, he was an entrepreneur, bankrolled the first flight from single engine London to Australia. So he's a really, really interesting character that was forgotten in Scotch whisky until now. Very good with a cigar as well. And if you are a foodie like me, you might consider the Towie with a Brie de Meaux as a beautiful cheese from France. Now, we are going further deeper into the range. I'll take you to the next one with the red label. So we've gone the first 3, moving to the second section. And this one is Jericho. Jericho is open 1822 and closed in 1913. We can see the details on the label, and it was William Smith. His brother was a preacher. They liked the Bible, so they called the distillery Jericho. It would actually rename to Beneke. Now, some people, anyone from Aberdeenshire would maybe know Beneke as the mountain. Many people walk their dogs up Beneke. That would be 1884. But this is the story of a farm distiller that would have to source casks from the port of Aberdeen and would predominantly be supplying the Aberdeen market, but they would be pioneer farm distilleries in the heavy sherry style. So you can see the deep, rich colour, even deeper than Towie because we have Oloroso casks, but then we're also going to have PX, Pedro Jimenez casks, 2 sherry casks, the dry sherry and the sweet sherry. So you have this combined, and it's going to be like Christmas pudding in a glass. Beautiful, rich notes. And Jericho is going to be full of dried spice. There's going to be these warm spices, but dried fruits, some leather notes, tangerine, so Christmas time, the stocking filler, Slangeva. This is a big bang for your buck dram. For some people, this is irresistible. First of all, you're going to get the big, heavy, rich, fruity notes on the nose, and then you're going to be delivered those sweet spices. So you're going to get a bang for buck, a beautiful dram. Some people might be pulling out a cigar, if you're allowed a cigar. This one, you're going to sit with this for a long time and enjoy it. It's a great, fantastic one for people who like the heavy sherry style. So this was pioneered in the late 1800s, 1880s, was pioneered in this area. So Jericho was in amongst there as one of the forefathers of this style. Real rich part of the heritage, not about exporting around the world. It went down to Edinburgh and won prizes at the World Fair, but really about fueling the local people's thirst for this style. They start to understand what sherry casks can do. The problem you might find, though, is with some of these distilleries, they were great location, barley, water, the 10 key elements. However, they were quite often remote because they might have started in the times of the illicit era. And so being so remote would be an advantage in the early days, was not an advantage later on. And so they were further away from the train station, 5 miles from Inch, Aberdeenshire. So this one, sherry cask, beautiful big heavy dram, but sadly didn't make it today. So we salute the Jericho that we know, and Benaki, if you're my friends in New Jersey and New York tonight or this afternoon. So Jericho takes us on as we go along the range. I find myself in the chocolate box with all these beautiful flavours going across the range. On to the next one that we have is Gersten. Now, Gersten, we were Highland, Lowland, Speyside, and then Jericho was in the Highlands next to the Speyside, and then we go to the very north of Scotland in Caithness, the top of Scotland, 6 miles from Thurso, Gersten, Halkirk, the Swanson family, 1796 to 1882. So it was this like deep time, way back, illicit times, small farm distillery. And this one here, you're going to start to see that the colour is different. Now we're going across the scale. Now the colour doesn't mean that it's going to be a lighter whiskey. Not in the case of Gersten. This is going to have this coastal, Northern Highland coastal feel. So the influence, bourbon cask, sherry cask, and port casks. So there's wine casks from the trade that came from the top of Scotland well before we have the trains. So this influence here, you're going to have some elements of the coastal style, the taste that you'd expect in this part of the world. And then there's going to be a sweetness from the wine cask. On the nose, you get toffee, caramel. Ah, beautiful. But then when you're going to feel is a difference in the palate. It's incredible. It's two different whiskies, sweet then salty. Beautiful. So sweet on the nose, and then you feel the coming of the maritime notes, the salty edge. This is because in north of Scotland you've got that peat, there's more salty notes to it. So when you're malting the barley, the influence is going to be there. And again, if you're a massive foodie, charcuterie, if you like some Parma ham, some Berwick ham, sit down with a nice cheese board with some hams and meats, and have some Gersten whiskey. There's could be a worse dinner that you ever have. Beautiful, really nice experience of a dram. So very different colour of casks in the chocolate box, more a salty caramel profile, and this one closes because the neighbour farmer, the water was diverted. So back then in these times, in the farm distilling times, they had to be humble and go back to their farming roots. So this would have the element in it. So this one is a beautiful dram. I hope you're enjoying the experience like I am, and please take note, give me comments on what you like, and any questions. I have some colleagues that are helping out in the content section. I'm trying to see some comments and feedback, so if there's more I can help with. I can see that you have the code is there, so you can see in the comments if you're interested in these packs or even taking the full size bottles of these ones. The code is there to buy in the e-shop, so it's a great deal to have at the moment and something to hunker down with. Have a dram. You know, you have to have something good in these days, something to look forward to. So Gersten, I need to put this down. I really enjoy the Gersten. I enjoy them all, but we have to move on, and we're going to take you across. Of course, obviously drinking responsibly. If you've already opened the pack and you started drinking, please take your time, relax, enjoy, and leave some in the glass to go back to. It's a really nice experience as the whiskies change over time. It's a beautiful tasting experience to have. It's like a mini tasting pack experience of all the different regions of Scotch. So you're in the Lowlands, you're in the Highlands, Speyside, you're going to have Islay, you're going to have Campbelltown, all the drams. So next we're going to take you to Dalarune. So Campbelltown, some people, Campbelltown's one of their favourites. Now Dalarune is a distillery that was in Campbelltown. We can see from the label 1825, 1925, 100 years this was open, and it's going to be sherry and rum cask influence. So here we go again with another style of whiskey. Now this is fascinating because this was a style of dram that wasn't really available to what was being made today, and we really in the archives research we've discovered this, and Dalarune was one of the reputable distillers. You know, Campbelltown had mixed reaction. The Campbelltown distillers became very famous through Victorian era, whiskey capital of the world, went up to 34 distilleries, now 3. They dropped in the 1920s. All the distilleries had to close, economic decline through US prohibition, overproduction, and preference towards Speyside. But Campbelltown is well loved today, and this is a very fascinating dram to experience from this, because the profile is going to be slightly different from what maybe you expect from this area that's available today. And Dalarune is the name anglified of Dalrada, is a kingdom between Northern Ireland and Scotland, and it's ancient history roots. It used to be a brewery in the 1600s, used to make beer, this distillery. So Slàinte, wherever you are in the world, for this one we take the 6th dram. It might be your 5th dram. It depends on which one you have in the box, the mystery box. So this one is going to be on the nose. You're going to feel some dried fruits, some fresh figs, and then it's going to move across to smoky bacon, hickory smoked bacon. This whiskey is for people who like to feel the whiskey. If you want to walk down the beach, walk your dog, feel the wind in your face as you climb the mountains, this is a dram for you. This is the Campbelltown style. Beautiful, rich, robust, the muscle of the Campbelltown drams. So some people like the smooth, rich Speyside experience, and other people like to feel the drams. Here we have the complexity, and then that deep puffs of smoke come through, like you've been barbecuing, hickory smoke, barbecuing in the beach. Beautiful dram, that one. If you have the chance, please, with some smoked salmon, is a delicious combination. Beautiful. These are all 43% non-chill filter. Dalarune. You have to be careful. Dalarune doesn't ruin you. This one is a favourite. And you find with these whiskies here, there's different seasons of people who join into whiskey can sometimes come through peaty whiskey, or they can come through the lighter styles, and then you start to migrate across different styles. And this what makes it quite unique, because there's so many different flavours to try here and explore with the mini box before you go deeper into the bigger size bottles, you know. There is 6, we've just gone across 6, but there's actually 7 in total, and I've just pre-poured the extra one that some people might have, and we take you to Islay. Now, for some people, that's a destination. They love the peaty style whiskey. It's their favourite style. Now, this is something different for some peat heads, you might say. This is from Islay. Just when you take the ferry, Port Ascaig, just about a mile or two along the road, it's Ballygrant. It's a beautiful Ballygrant Inn. Friends of mine, cheers to you, Slanjava, and until better times. And next to that was a Lost Distillery called Lossett. Lossett Estate now. So it's hidden away, this distillery in Islay, been forgotten about until now. We have recreated a profile of this distillery. Now, the nearest distillery was Killala, and some of the casks were held there near the end of its day. But this was 1817 to 1867. So just 19th century was its era, 50 years. You're going to find this is a fascinating dram because it's an elegant style peat. It's going to be 35 ppm, phenol parts per million. So when we look at peaty whiskey, this is going to be in the middle age of the heavy peat style. It's going to be an elegant style. So it's not aggressive, it's not bitter. It's going to be a more smooth experience. First, you're going to feel some pears and some almonds. And the almonds move across to like almond milk. And on the nose, there is the smoke, but it's very gentle. And then when you taste on the palate, you're going to feel this warm blanket embrace of the peat that you'll taste. And of course, I have to say, Slanjava, your good health to everyone today in the world. Difficult times that we are going through. Lost at home. So, taste this one. Even if you don't like peat whiskey, you might find there's an elegance to this, and it's not as aggressive as you think it might be. So this one is a smoky. People who like peat whiskey like to try other peat whiskies. So this one is a fascinating one to try. Definitely one to explore further in these times. You know, if you like the smoky flavours of food and drink. You know, so you have these notes here. You can go back across the range as we go along. There's the box here has been fully unboxed tonight with the drams, the chocolate box of Scotch whisky. So please do give us your feedback on these expressions. Um, as we look at the range, there was 7 in the range, and there's actually the series above is Archivist series, older whiskies again, and then the Vintage series is even older whiskies inside, is limited release. So these are more expressions from each house of the distilleries that we explored. So it's a fantastic range of drams, some special offers on the website at the moment. Best time to explore and buy, pick up a bottle. Got the full-size bottle, as you can see behind me, and is an interesting experience. So very interested to know about what you think about the range, what you think about the box of the Discovery Pack. We have the 6-pack and the 3-pack. There's some questions that have come in, and there was I think some were answered, but Joseph Curtis, creating the whiskies, how do you go about attempting to recreate the flavours? This goes back to our archive research, where we found all the information, going to the libraries and the university to extract the production figures and numbers, and piece it all together. And then the whiskey making team sourcing and curating casks that would support the evidence around what we would call terroir, the 10 key points of the DNA of the distillery. So it's quite a unique proposition in Scotch whisky. There's no other company that does that. So it's quite fascinating. And that's why we wanted to set ourselves apart with these black bottles and a different look. And it's something to explore for people that come to whisky. And as we journey. So we've been doing some Facebook Lives. We had Lost in a Moment. This is Lost at Home. We like to continue the series as we go along through this era. We are connecting through our partners and customers around the world in different ways with webinars and things like that, and also Facebook Live and Instagram, and keeping in touch with everyone. And we're interested to know what you might be interested in for further experiences. One or two, a few different avenues might be. We're going to put a poll on just now for you to have a look at, and if you'd like to vote and let us know what you'd like. We have a couple of options, like if you'd like to see us do a pairing session with the whiskies, like a food pairing session, or maybe like a serves. Maybe if some people like to experiment and try maybe like a classic cocktail from the 19th century. So in the next few weeks, we'll be continuing the series of Facebook Live with these. So please let us know what you'd like to see from us, and the other ranges or tastings. Any feedback is always welcome. And I do hope you enjoyed the experience tonight. It's been a pleasure. Sharing drams is always a pleasure. And if there's anything you want to know more about, we're here to explore that. So it's been fantastic. We finish on Losset. Please let us know which ones you enjoyed, or which styles you're more interested in. So we're going to finish up with this Facebook Live tasting experience. And if there's any other questions, we can come back to you if I haven't had a look. The hint of these drams special. Have any lost Glasgow distilleries? Well, there was many. The problem with Glasgow is it's been the centre of the whisky world today, but the closed distilleries, there was thousands of stills across Ayrshire in and around the north of Glasgow, but the malt riots, and it was preferred in the Highlands, for the single malt distilleries. You find that this era where the 1823 Act would really give base to the Highland style. With the lowland industry was very much controlled by two families in Fife who would supply the market for London. So they were a really big high volume producer of grain whisky. So you hear of like Rabbie Burns talking about Kilbaggy, you know, and you've got the Hague family. So in the lowlands, it was dominated by that. So the tax system, there was the Highland line was created in 1784-85. After that, there was two regions, Highland and the lowlands. And when that happened, it really gave the Highlanders a fighting chance. People preferred the Highland style. The Lowlanders preferred malt from the Highlands because it came from the pot still, whereas the Lowlands was this very rough, harsh liquid that was high volume from the coffee still that was came in from the 1830s when it was invented, but really further through into the 1850s. So you know, the story of Scotch whisky has been defined by politics and this Highland Line region. So the Highlanders, they weren't really allowed to supply. It was for supply for themselves. They weren't allowed to supply. And then it opened out in 1823 with the Excise Act. So that's when it really took off. And that's why we have in Scotch whisky in a map, it's very dotted out. You know, it doesn't look routine. You would think that there would be much more distilleries in and around Glasgow and Edinburgh, but it's just been because of history that's created that anomaly. So what sort of age in the classic, archivist and vintage, David Buchanan? So we have in a classic range, I described earlier, in the profile of roughly about 10 to 12-year-old single malts. And then in the archivist series, in the mid-range, the mid-range will have about 15 to 18-year-old single malts, moves up to 46% ABV. And then the vintage range here is going to be 25 years over. Some of the drams inside, very old, and is limited release. So these are some of, I'm trying to answer some of these questions. If there's more, have you tried from, where are we? Have you tried from any of the closed distilleries you tried to replicate, or are they long gone? Owen Roberts, have you tried from the closed distilleries, tried to replicate? No, it's been very hard to find the liquid. The only one that had a bottle left was Gersten. It's in the family of Lord Thurso. They're not prepared to open it or give it to anyone or sell it, so it's not been possible to taste it. Now, there has been some bottles come onto the market with some things like what was made from previous Towermore, but it was a very different era. It was blended Scotch. It wasn't representative of what was available, and it didn't have the main relevance to the style. So, you know, there's some of these, like Peter Dawson Towermore, he opened Conville Moor Distillery as well, another iconic closed distillery. You know, Losset was too long ago, into 19th century, no bottles. Jericho, the last whiskey was tasted in Jericho, although it closed in 1913, was in 1939, 2 weeks before the Second World War. The last cask of Jericho was enjoyed at Highland Wedding, the distillery, and it was written evidence, so we know that. And so that was finished. Unfortunately, we weren't able to taste that. And sometimes you've taken some of the leap of faith of the information around, because when you know so much about the production and the styles, and you know about the productions and styles around, like for instance, Auchnaggy, the nearest one in the area, Pitlochry, is Erderdour Distillery. So the way that they produce the whiskey, their history, their heritage. So there are some hints with some of the distilleries that are around, that were close, nearby, within 4 or 5 miles of them. If that helps to answer some of the questions. Definition of blended malts. Blended malt Scotch whisky. So this is it's single malts, and single malt is from one distillery, is made from malted barley and pot distilled. And the single malt, if you take from one distillery, and another, and blend them together, is blended malt. It used to be called vatted malt, but that's a terminology. It's slightly confusing because blended Scotch, blended malt, sound quite similar, but they're very different liquids, as we explained. Um, just scanning some of the questions. Um, I hope you've managed to be able to see this with the internet. And will you plan to show the blend formula like Compass Box did? LK Kwan. Well, that's an interesting tact because with Compass Box, what they have done, and it's a fascinating company, is they've created a particular story with their take on Scotch whisky. We all take different avenues. So they are taking like a garishta style, and they are showing the blend. There are elements where we can show you a little bit more about it, but it's we reveal the casks of the whisky, and we try to give you more information about the production, what the distillery was doing back then, because it's fascinating more about the old distillery. This really is a platform for us to talk about this old distillery. So we share all the information about the old times. We're taking you back to this golden era. We don't. It's not so important for us to focus on now. That's what Compass Box is doing, what they do with their thing. Our thing is more about, we want to reveal the story of these pioneers and forefathers to the industry that have been left behind. So the focus has been on that. But we do give information about some of the distilleries. I do know some of the distilleries, but I would have to try and find my Men in Black pen. So we don't reveal. Yeah, that's that question. I'm trying to see if I've answered everything. Can range. Yes, please give a hint on these drams special, different from other blended malts. Yeah, so just touching on different from other blended malts, different brands. We are the only one in this industry that focuses on a homage to these old distilleries. We're trying to give you a recreation of what they would produce today, not a copy of what they were doing back then, but at the same time sharing their stories, sharing the information about how they were pioneers. And because many people come to Scotch whisky, they don't understand why Scotch whisky is so famous, and there's a missing link. So this is a missing link, if you call it, of the past. It's in that kind of Victorian era or pre-Victorian era in the 19th century when things really changed, and it moved from people who were farmers. They were crops and they had cattle, and then they start to think about making extra money. So in illicit times, they were making extra money to pay the rent. They were tenants. So there's landowners in Scotland is the history, and they were tenants, and they would be paying their rent with making this on the side. Now today, obviously, it's fast forwarded to all these big companies, and it's all about Scotch whisky production, and not so much about farmers making a second income. So that's the only income they make is the whiskey. So we like to tell the story about how we got here. I suppose that would be the story behind why we're slightly different from the other blended malts. We're hoping that these drams you'll be able to enjoy many times to come. When you look at the Scotch whisky, all the single malt distilleries, they have master blender. I have a master blender. We have a master blender, and whatever single malt you have, it is a recipe. It's a recipe created as they marry the casks together, because single malt is a marriage of casks. If it's single cask, it's from one cask. If it's quite often married together. So all the single malt companies create recipes of these. Any of your drams award winning? Yes, they are all award winning. So we have 92, 92 points, Wine Enthusiast, and also San Francisco, Hong Kong International Wine Spirits. 92 points, Wine Enthusiast. This one is 91 points. Gold medal award when it first came out as well. Lost it, 93 points. Voted the best blended malt in the world a couple of years ago. And yeah, they all are award winning. And maybe some more awards in the near future. Plans for additional lines, distillery releases to the range. Additional lines, we'll be looking at, we have already 21 in the series. You can see, if you can see this, there's 7, and then there's 3 ranges of the 7, 21 in total there. So that's a lot of casks to curate, a lot of expressions. And we do occasionally bring out some limited releases for sometimes for different markets. We will be looking into this every year. We have revisit some of these and see what's possible. So it's quite possible we will. At the moment, because we're all hunkering down and lost at home, it's probably on hold just right now. But we'll be looking at that once things return to normal. So I hope that answers the question of these small batch. Limited edition in the future. Good, some small batch. So hopefully we'll be able to provide some small batch. So you need to keep in touch. You need to follow our Facebook and our channels, your notifications. Make sure you get notifications. And we're going to be back in touch in the next week. So same time, same place. Set your watch. You're not doing anything anyway. You're staying at home. So hashtag stay at home. Stay safe is most important. And as we say in Scotland, Slanjava, good health. So I hope you've enjoyed this experience. Take advantage of this special offer with the free delivery and the percentage off at the moment. Fantastic time to stock up for some drams. And we shall reconvene where you have these drams. If you want to pick up one of these discovery packs, we'll reconvene and I shall share some food pairings or some serves to go along with these for the next couple of weeks. So hang on to your coattails and enjoy the rest of the evening. The website has been updated, so please have a look at the website. More information, backstory on all these distilleries, the research. So I have some friends from all over the world, across Europe, and some people will be maybe watching this later tomorrow from Asia, and my friends in the US as well. You know, I like to come and see you all in market, but in the meantime, it's a great pleasure to spend some time, share a dram, and face-to-face time. So thank you very much. And more information, we'll get back to the comments, and I think we'll call this a wrap. And we'll see you the next time. Thank you very much. Salan Java.